Hey guys, Frozen here. Today I'll be showing you how to make a fully working gun in Unity. Before we begin, you'll need to have Unity 5 or up installed and a code editor that's compatible. I will be using Visual Studio 2015 for this example. This tutorial is pretty simple, but will still require some basic knowledge of Unity and C#. Let's start by creating a new Unity project. You can name it and place it however you like. Just make sure you add the characters package. Alright, now that we're in our project, let's add a rigid body first person controller to the scene. Let's also give him some terrain to stand on. Okay, now that we have a player, let's make a gun for visual representation. Feel free to use your own model if you have one. The steps will not change. Let's start by creating an empty parent. And we'll put our objects inside as children. For the purposes of this tutorial, we're just going to roughly model the shape of a gun. The most important thing is our sight, because that's where we'll be drawing the raycast from. And for our sight, we'll do the same thing with the cube, but we'll make it smaller. Actually, we can probably just duplicate this to save time. And that way, it stays perfectly centered over the body for the most realistic representation of a sight. Before we go any further, let's quickly create some materials so we can differentiate between our terrain and our gun. If you want to change the color of your terrain, you'll need to add a texture in the terrain editor. For now, we'll make our gun a color similar to black, because that's what a gun usually is. This one will make a little lighter just so it's different than the body. And there we go. Now we need to parent the gun to the player. That way when they look around, the gun will follow. Just add it as a parent to the main camera, and Unity takes care of the rest. It's that easy. The last thing we need to do before we begin coding is to remove the head bob script attached to the main camera. I find that it causes a lot of errors, and it also causes alignment issues between the camera and sight, so it's just better to remove it. Now we're ready to begin programming our weapon. Let's create a folder for our scripts. And inside here, we'll make a new script for our weapon. I'm just going to call it gun, but you can call it whatever you like. Now let's attach it to the player parent. The root object is what we want to attach it to. Now, open up your script in your code editor. The first thing we're going to do is check for user input. We want to know when the user's left clicking, because that's when we'll shoot. We do this by doing if input.getMouseButton. The mouse button we want to check is 0. That's the left click. And that's it. Everything we're going to be doing will happen within these parentheses when they're shooting. Next, we need to store the information for the sight in our script. That way we know which way the player is aiming when they shoot. To do this, we'll store the transform, and we'll call it sight. To assign it, we'll use the Unity hierarchy. So if our sight is in here, and our gun script is attached to the parent, we need to go to the main camera, then the gun, then the sight. We'll do this like so. And that's it. Now we can check if it works by running our script in Unity. If it logs an error, we'll know it wasn't able to assign it correctly. And there we go, that's the site part done. Now we're ready to program our Raycast function. To do this, let's start by declaring a Raycast hit. It's pretty self-explanatory. The Raycast hit stores all the information for what is hit during the Raycast. Now you want to check this by doing if physics.raycast, and then we're going to need some parameters. So the first one is going to be the transform position of our site. Then we're going to want to do the transform.forward of the site. Then we're going to tell the Raycast function where to send this information to, which will be the Raycast hit. So out hit. Then lastly, you want to do the distance. For our sake, we'll do 200 meters, but you can do whatever you like. Now if you want to test that your Raycast function is working, you can debug.log your hit.transform.name. So let's test it. When I look at the ground and I left click, you will see that my console has logged a terrain, which is the object that we hit. Now that our Raycast is working at a basic level, let's make it more advanced. Right now it's firing every frame that the user is left clicking, which is incorrect. There's also no ammunition keeping track. Let's do ammunition first, because ammunition is a little easier to program and will work interactively with the timer. Most first-person shooters show the ammunition at the bottom left of the screen, which is what we're going to do. This square box here of the canvas represents your screen space. So let's drag the text to the bottom left. And let's leave a little bit of extra space around the corners. Now, it looks like it's at the bottom left, but when you run the game, it probably won't be at the bottom left. See, it's not quite there. This is because of the anchors of the canvas. So, if we want to set it to the bottom left, we need to change these values all to 0. Now when we run it, our ammunition shows at the bottom left correctly, but we're not quite there yet. Let's change the width and height to accommodate for larger text. And then we'll change the text to 42 point, but again, you can do whatever you like. Let's reposition a little bit, and now when we run our game, we'll see that 30 out of 30 shows up at a nice size at the bottom left of our screen like it should be. You'll also notice that if you change your aspect, it will still show up at the bottom left regardless. Now we need to find the text object. Whenever you're working with Unity UI, make sure to include using unityengine.ui at the top. So let's declare text ammo, and then assign it in the start function like so. Ammo equals GameObject.find canvas slash ammo counter dot get component text. And now we can test this by doing ammo.text equals high. We go back to Unity. We can now see that our ammo counter has been set to high and is working correctly. Now let's go back to Unity and let's program in some ammunition so we can show it to the user. For the maximum ammo in our magazine, let's declare a constant integer since that'll never change. So let's do const int max ammo equals 30. Just like always, you can do it however you like. Then we're going to have to do another integer for ammo, but because we called text ammo, let's do ammunition. So by default, let's also take out this text here, ammunition will be 30 since the player will start with a full magazine. So you do ammunition equals max ammo. Now lastly, when we output our ammunition, it's in the format x/y. For example, 30 out of 30. Now, that out of 30 will never change, so we can declare a string for that and be a little more efficient. So let's do string ammo display, and we'll call it ammo display equals /30. So let's send this information to the player. Underneath our input.getMouse button check, we'll reduce our ammo by 1. We do this simply by doing ammunition minus minus. And it's usually good to do it at the bottom. Let's do ammo.text equals ammunition.toString, because we want to convert the integer to a string, plus ammo display. Now there's still no timer checking how often we shoot, so technically we're still shooting every frame, but you can still test that this works by left clicking in game. Your ammunition should go down very fast, but it will work. So now let's add that timer. We'll start by declaring a float for our timer. We'll just call it timer. Now our timer is always going to be updated for each frame, so at the start of our update function we'll do timer plus equals time.delta time. If you don't know what delta time is, it's the time that it takes for each frame to happen. That way your timer is updating accurately with time. The last thing we need to add is our rate of fire. So let's declare another float and we'll call it fire rate. For an automatic weapon that usually dumps in 3 seconds, you'll want to set your fire rate to 0.1 f, that is 1/10 of a second, or 10 rounds per second. In our if check, we need to check that our timer is greater than the fire rate. Then lastly, we need to reset the timer every time the player shoots. So let's test it in Unity. So there we go. Ammunition is draining at a rate of 10 rounds per second, but it's still going negative. So let's just add a quick check in the same if statement as before, that ammunition is greater than 0. The last thing I'll show you today is reloading. So let's start by declaring a boolean, and we'll call it isReloading. Then we're going to want to check in our update function if the user has pressed our reload key. So for now we'll bind it to R, because that's a common first-person shooter reload key. We do this by doing if input.getKeyDown keycode.r, and in these parentheses we can do what we like with our reload function. In this case we're going to call a reload coroutine. Coroutines are an easy way to keep track of time, especially with things like reloading. So to declare a coroutine, we do enumerator, we'll call it reload, and put our parentheses just like a normal function. But it will return an error at first, but that's okay. We can ignore that. When we reload, we're going to set isReloading to true. And then we're going to want to wait for however long it takes the player to reload. For this example, we'll just do 1 second. After the player is done reloading, we're going to want to reset the ammunition. We'll set ammunition to max ammo again, and we'll set isReloading to false. So now we can call our coroutine after we receive the user input for reloading. You call this just like a normal function, but you put start coroutine before it. Start coroutine, reload. That's it. The last thing we have to add is that when the player's shooting, we need to check to make sure that they're not reloading. So all we do, and exclamation mark is reloading. And there we go, we're finally finished. When you run your project, you'll see that your ammunition reduces by the correct amount and will not go below 0. When you reload, it will reset to 30 after 1 second. And if you're in the middle of shooting and you reload, you will stop shooting and you'll be able to resume shooting when you're done reloading. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I will also put a link to download the project as a Unity package in the description. Bye-bye.